Okay, everybody, here's part 3. So now we're into equation writing, and so we have to kind of understand the structure which we have to follow. If we're going to write any kind of linear equation, and this goes all the way back to algebra, we're going to need two things. We're going to need a slope, and we're going to need a y-intercept. And so please understand, no matter what form the problem takes, you are simply trying to find a slope and a y-intercept, and then write that into an equation. This is also going to get pretty tight. I didn't leave a lot of space here because I knew we can kind of like digitally zoom, and so I'm going to try to do that the best I can, although kind of my controls are all over the place right now. All right, so let's do this. So first we're giving, as a starting information, an equation. So let's please recognize this equation as being our basic y equals mx plus b equation, where the m is going to inform the slope, which tells us our slope is going to be 2/3. And our y-intercept is going to be +7, although that's not going to matter. The y-intercept from the original equation is not a useful number to us. All we're really trying to rip out is the slope. Okay? So once we have the slope, so m is established to be 2/3, we can now go about the business of writing equations. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not writing equations here. We're just talking about slope. I'm so sorry. Hold that conversation. I was on the wrong one. We're just trying to tell the parallel perpendicular slope. That's easy. So I know if I have the slope of 2/3, the parallel slope is going to be the same value. That's going to be 2/3. And then the perpendicular slope is going to be the opposite reciprocal, which means I have to do two things. One, I have to change the sign, which I'm going to make it negative. And then I have to flip the slope itself. That's what it means to reciprocate, to flip the value. I'm going to have -3/2. I apologize, guys. I was one full page ahead of us. Okay. The second thing, let's find slope again. They're going to try to hide it by using two coordinate pairs and then not giving you a graph. That's not a big deal. We just have to calculate it. And luckily, we have been given a slope equation. And we know slope is going to be change in y over change in x, which you can calculate directly by the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What I've kind of noticed is some people like to just count it out. Some people like to use a formula. I'm not concerned which one you use as long as it works for you. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and use the formula though, because the formula tends to be a little more complicated. So remember, y1, y2, x1, x2, the ones and the twos just mean which point value you're looking at. And so I'm going to call this like point 1, I'm going to call this like point 2, which means this is x1, this is y1, this is going to be x2, and this is going to be y2. So the reason that's important is because it tells us what to put in our equation. The one big mistake I see a lot of people make is ignoring the fact that you could end up with double negatives, because it is a subtraction problem in the problem I was given, ergo those minus signs are there. Okay, I need to grab y2 and y1. Well, y2 is right here, it's going to be an 8. And then y1 is right here, it's going to be a 3. The minus sign is from the formula, so it must be there. We could end up stacking signs together. Let's find out. I also now need to grab x2. Okay, and that's going to be 15. And then I need to grab x1. Look at this. We have a -5, and so we are going to have a stacked negative sign. Okay, not a big deal. Two negatives always make a positive. We know that as a rule. And so if I want the slope, 8 minus 3 is going to be 5. 15 plus a -5 is 15 plus 5. That's going to give me 20. And so we have 1/4 as our slope. And you do probably want to get in the habit of always reducing your slope down. It's not proper really to leave it as 5/20 unless you have some specific reason that you need to. Now as far as the parallel and perpendicular slopes, that means the parallel one should be the same. So that's going to be 1/4. The perpendicular slope changes the sign. So positive 1/4 becomes a negative something. And then I'm going to flip the fraction around to make it 4/1. Again, depending on who your teacher is, I definitely would say reduced form to be -4 is more preferable. If you're one of my students, Mr. Collins' students, I definitely want you to think of it in terms of -4. All right. Now let's equation write. Now that we know how to find slope and the parallel slope and the perpendicular slope, let's actually do the writing portion of it. Where's my mouse? There she is. Okay. So we'll come back to those in a different pass-through. So now I have to write the parallel line and the perpendicular line. Now, going back to what I was saying before, that means we have to find the slope and we have to find the y-intercept. And so anything that we give you as far as a problem, we have to give you a way to find those two things. So always keep that in your back of your mind. Well, the first one I think is easy. So or at least the slope is easy. So we know it's going to be mx plus b form. And so we can assume the m value, the slope value is going to be -3/4. which immediately tells us that the parallel slope is going to be -3/4, and the perpendicular slope shall be 4/3, because we have to change the sign, and then we have to flip the fraction. Finding the b value, though, is going to be the part that's tough. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to try anyway. Let's see how this works. A little bit laggy, not too bad. Okay, and so the way we're going to find the b value is by utilizing this other point, this pass-through point. When I say it contains a point or I say it passes through the point, what I'm actually trying to give you is a usable x and y value. And so we have to understand that at least one good x value is going to be the 12 or -12, and one good y value is going to be the 2. Okay? And so let's keep that in mind as we're solving for the parallel and perpendicular equations. Okay, so here's how this all comes together. This is really just an algebra exercise. We know the equation for a line has to follow the form y = mx + b. Okay? Now, this is a 4-part equation. There's a y, there's an m, there's an x, and there's a b. To solve a 4-part equation, you have to have 3 of the 4 parts. Well, given that it is parallel, we do have one of the parts. We just solved, not that long ago, for the slope. We found it to be -3/4. Being a parallel line, we know that that slope is still going to be -3/4. Okay? And so we can substitute out the m for a -3/4. Okay? We don't know what the b value is, so it's going to stay b, but we do know what the x and y are. So here we know the x value, at least temporarily, has to be a -12. Okay, so we'll substitute that guy in. Okay, and then the y value, at least at one point temporarily, is going to be a 2. So with all this substitution, now we can simply solve for b. Okay, now I don't have a lot of space here, so I'll probably do a little shortcutting. Okay, but we know this has to be 2. Well, I do see 2 negatives here, so I know the result is positive. I have 3 divided by 4 times 12. I know for me personally, I like doing this. I like doing the division first. 12 divided by 4 is going to be a 3. 3 times 3 is going to be 9. I knew the result was positive, and that's going to give me my b. Okay, so solving for b, getting b by itself, let's subtract out 9s. And so the b value is just going to be -7. That's it. Okay, now in terms of writing the equation, I'm going to replace the numbers back with x and y. I'm going to keep the parallel slope, and then I'm going to put in my new b value. And that's going to be our equation. For a perpendicular slope, it's almost the same exact exercise, except we're going to change the slope. Okay, so y = mx + b. Okay. But the slope now has to change to its perpendicular version. And so it's not going to be -3/4. The slope value now is going to be +4/3. We do that because from the parallel slope to the perpendicular slope, we have to reciprocate, which means to flip. We also have to change the sign, so negative to positive. We're going to recycle the x and y values. And so the y value is still going to be 2, just like it was before. Because it passes through 2, it passes through 2. And then we're going to take the x value, of -12, and we're going to use it for the x value. Okay, we still don't know what the b value is, so that's going to stay a variable plus b. Okay, it's a little compact there. Now we're in the algebra solving steps. So 2. 3 goes into 12 4 times. I have 4 times 4, which is going to be 16. I have a positive times a negative, so that's going to be a -16. And that's going to be plus b. Okay. Now I'm finishing or solving, let's add 16 to both sides. And so I have 18 to be my new b value. And so constructing the equation, we'll return to x's and y's. We'll use 4/3 as our perpendicular slope. And then we'll add 18 to be our new y-intercept. And so that's going to be our new perpendicular equation. And so for the second exercise, we're not going to see anything dramatically different. Okay, but what we will see is a different way to find slope, and it's not going to be anything too tricky because we've already done this work. You can use the slope equation if you want. Personally, for me, when I think about slope, maybe I should use a different color here. Separate that. Okay, so slope is just going to be change in y over change in x. Now, the slope formula will get you there, but you can also get here by simply counting. And so we know this is x and y. And so if we start at -1 and we end up at +1, I know that we've gone up 2. If we start at 8 on the x's and end up at 11 on the x's, 8, 9, 10, 11, that's +3. And so I know our slope is going to be 2/3. If you didn't quite catch what I did, you can certainly use a slope formula like we did on the previous page. That's just as good, but our slope either way is going to be +2/3. Okay, now we have a point, xy. Okay. So our x value temporarily is going to be a 6. That's contained on the line. Also, our y value temporarily is going to be 10. That's also contained on the line. And we know our slope is going to be 2/3. Okay, so now we have to calculate our b value for the parallel line. Okay, so building out our equation, because really when it says to find an equation, it really just means build an equation. We can use 2/3 for that slope. We don't know the x, we got to find the b. Our temporary y value to help us out is going to be 10. Our temporary x value, just to help us find the equation, is going to be 6. And the b value is the thing we're trying to calculate. Okay. Again, this is just my methodology, but 3 goes into 6 twice. And so I know that I have 2 times 2 on top. That's going to be a 4. And so when I subtract those 4s off, the b value I'm left with is going to be 6. Okay, so what I'm looking for in terms of my equation, okay, we're going to return back to the general xy. I know 2/3 is my slope, and then I'll add 6. Okay. Repeating on the perpendicular part, I'm going to change my slope now. Instead of being 2/3, it should be -3/2 because I have to negate and flip opposite reciprocals. Okay, then x plus our new b value. Since we're kind of recycling here using the same point that it passes through, and so our temporary y value is still going to be 10. -3/2 this time. Temporary x value is still going to be 6. Okay, so 2 goes into 6 3 times. And so I'll end up with 10, it's the same as -9 plus b. Okay, so adding 9 to both sides. Our new b value should be 19. Okay, so we're on a little space here. So returning back to the general xy, plus 19, boom, there's our new equation. Okay, so let me zoom out a little bit. All right, so let's move on to the last page, and then we'll whip back through this review like 2 more times. All right. So we're asked to do the same thing, write an equation that's parallel and perpendicular to the graph that I was given. I don't think we necessarily need the graph if we have the points, because the information we need is still the same. We still need the y-intercept. We're still going to need the slope, and we're still going to need the y-intercept. Now, as far as slope goes, can you use like the formula? Sure, you can use the slope formula if you'd like, but honestly, I'm going to take advantage of having the graph itself. I know that slope, or the m value, is going to be rise over run, which is just change in y over change in x, which I can simply count out by picking a couple nice points. Now, obviously, the points were given here to you, like that's fine. But like even if they weren't given to you, we can find nice points to start and stop where they cross. They don't have to be these 2 points, but I'll give you advice that they do have to be points that are what we call lattices, which are these points where the grid lines meet. You definitely don't want to count mid-grid to mid-grid. You'll never know the exact value, but you can count intersection to intersection. Okay? And so if I'm just going left to right as graphs are red, I have to go up a certain amount and over a certain amount. Okay? The up amount, if I'm counting it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my change in y is plus 5. And my change in x, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, how nice is that? My change in x is going to be plus 10. Okay, so overall, I know that my change in y is plus 5, my change in x is plus 10, and so my overall slope can reduce to 1 over 2. That's going to be my slope. And so now I just have to write the equation of the line. Now we were given a point. It's a little bit subtle. The point's actually going to be right here. It's at the origin, and that's going to have the coordinates 0, 0, which means the x and y are 0. From here, you can attack this two different ways. I say we just attack it the way we have. Let's just build out the equation. So y equals mx plus b. Okay, so our y value is 0. My slope value is 1/2. My x value is also 0 because they're both 0. And then I need to find my d value. I'm just making that a capital because I want to make it stand out. Simplifying, so 0 is the same as 1/2 times 0. Well, that's just 0. So that collapses, and so my d value is just 0. Now, of course, this is predictable because I was looking for a y-intercept. The y-intercept, by definition, is where it crosses a y-axis, and like it literally crosses a y-axis at 0. Either way, let's return to our x's and y's. So we have 1/2 x plus 0. We don't actually have to write the plus 0, and so I'll take that to be our parallel. With our perpendicular, we can run the same trick, but remember our slope has to change. So it has to flip, so 1/2 flips to 2. Positive flips to negative, and so our slope is going to be -2. Okay, we can use, since we're trying to cross through that point, it's still going to be zeros. Okay, and so our b value is going to be 0 again. So the difference in the two equations is going to be the slopes. Oops. Sorry about that. Wow, that is scrolling by itself. That is weird. Okay, so do I do another one on this page? I forget how many there were. I don't think so. I think it's only 3. Yeah, it's only 3. Okay. So the thing I want you to notice is the rhythm is the same. We're still finding slope. We're still building the equation using the known point to get the y-intercept. Okay, and then we can end up with a couple different equations. Okay, so we have just now finished officially the entire review. 1/3 of the review. So if you were struggling and kind of following along, you have now seen all the questions, all the question types that we're going to ask you on the exam. Okay, and so every other video here is going to be chopped up the same way. So 3 problems per video or 3 sections per video. We're just going to pass through the review 2 more times. And so if you can go through 1 more time, that's awesome. That gives you such an advantage on the test. If you can get through a 3rd time, you should feel really good about the material and just go in and just like destroy that test. Right? That's what we want you guys to do. We want you to do really well. We want to show you guys, we want to give you guys an opportunity to show us what you know. That's why we're making this all this review material happen, all right? And so I'll see you in the next video. I'm going to restart from the very beginning of the review, and I'm going to pass through the entire thing again, doing again the middle third of all problems. All right, see you then.